So, I love history, but I probably used to be like most of the people out there, and when you used to hear the word history, you used to come up with quite a few answers that weren't very nice to the subject, like, oh, but history's so boring. History's like totally old. When am I ever gonna use history? It's not blimmin' useful, is it? Well, I'm here to tell you how in fact it is old. It can actually be quite useful, and it's definitely not boring. How? Firstly, if you know a lot, and I mean a lot about history, you will look quite intelligent. I mean, there is a reason why if you want to do a law degree, you have to have some sort of historian background behind you before you actually went on to do your degree. There's a reason for that, guys. Secondly, you will have a working knowledge of things that most people haven't even heard of before. Lastly, it will actually help you go forward in life. And I mean, I hear this all the time. How can history help you go forward in life? Well, if, for example, I'm talking about Hitler again. If, for example, someone wanted to be voted into power and you saw that they'd like been gradually building up, and you weren't really trustworthy of them. They were kind of really good at talking, really good at giving speeches, really good at making people think what he wanted them to think. If you can remember this, then you will be prepared if someone else decides to come along and do the exact same thing that he did. History is in everything, and I mean basically everything, you know? Science has history in it. Maths has history in it. English has history in it. Drama does, psychology does, RE does. I mean, if you didn't have the history in the subject, think about what the actual subject would be like. RE. Would you be able to read the Bible if you didn't really understand what was being said in it? Because it is an old text. How can you learn it so it doesn't end up still being boring? Now, this is probably the least favourite bit. I mean, favourite fun bit, boring bit? This is probably the boring bit. Learning history. Once you have learnt history, you will find it so fascinating and so fun to just talk about. But until then, like every other subject, you'll need to go through a boring part. Boring part. And this can be different for anyone, you know? Some people need to like reenact it to try and, you know, be able to do it, be able to remember it. Whereas some people need to hear it to know what they need to do, and then some people need to see it to know what they have to do. But this is what I do when I need to learn something to do with history. I will write countless, and I mean countless amount of notes, and a lot of the time they are less organised than this, but they will be just messy. And then, when that's all done, you can get onto a funner part. And this funner part is with colours. And you can do, you know, a mind map to help you. So, from, say, a book, you can narrow that down to about 7 double-sided sheets of paper. And then you can narrow that down to about 2 mind maps. Maybe more, depending on what's actually in the book, or how big the book is. But you can gradually narrow it down to just the important things. So then it does become fun after that. And then once you know it, it's just remembering it and remembering how, if you're doing a degree or if you're doing history as a subject that you need to learn, then, you know, you need to do the historian part of it. And the essays. The essays are boring, but the essays are boring in every single subject. My last piece of advice as well is to make sure you put everything into themes. Themes. They help you when you're doing essays. If you have to write an essay to do with history, a lot of the time they don't want you talking about, you know, Elizabeth did this at the start of her reign, Elizabeth did this at the end of her reign. No, they want you to break it down even further. They want you to say, well, her accession to the throne was like this. And you can put everything in it at the start of it as well. And then you can say something about wars that she was involved in. I think there's one major war that she was involved in. And then you can talk about, Puritanism, Protestantism, Catholicism, the separatists, the radicalists. You can talk about all those, and they can be your themes. And they will help you write your essay in the way that a lot of the time examiners do want to see you putting them into themes. They don't want to hear you do each paragraph about a person or about an event. It gets boring, guys. And don't babble too much, and make sure that when you're writing your essay, you don't do too much description.